We are way more than just the body. We're way more than what just shows on the outside. And we are spiritual beings having this human experience. We're really meant to be equally intuitive as we are intellectual and be creative and have all those parts working together. You can't force your intuition, just like you can't force creativity. It's a receptive state. If you're just going to allow it to show up when you start to connect with more of that for yourself, and it's really a remembering, you naturally just do start to connect with a little more laughter, even if it's just the tiniest little bit of laughter on a rough day. That tiny little bit just starts to bump up your vibrational frequency, because everything's vibrational frequency. Whatever we love and we're really good at will also bring up our biggest fears. And so in some ways, it can even be a sign if you start to notice if you're doing something that you really care so much about and your fears start to come up. Sometimes the take home from that can actually be, hey, you're on the right track. You just have to keep remembering the fears aren't real and just keep releasing those fears.
Hey everyone, it's Sophia from Sacred You. Thank you so much for being here. A quick message before we dive into today's conversation. You may have been watching the podcast videos but have not had a chance to hit that subscribe button. So if you have ever gained value from our videos, from our conversations, it would mean so much to us if you would hit that subscribe button below right now, or even just give us a like. And what that means is not only does it allow us to grow our subscriber base, but it allows us to bring in more important guests for you to listen to. And you will be one of the first ones to be notified. So please hit that subscribe button and let's get started on today's conversation. Welcome to the Pathways to Wellbeing podcast. My name is Sophia from Sacred You, and with me today I have the absolute honor, excitement and pleasure to talking to the beautiful and amazing Gwyneth Flack. Gwyneth, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to talk to you. And I've been enjoying listening to your other episodes too while I drive around in my car.
And thank you for that. That is really appreciated. And Gwyneth, to get to know you a little bit, you're a transformational teacher and a coach. You've empowered thousands of professionals to access their intuition and creative power through practical tools. And you're also an author, and we're going to be talking about your wonderful new book, Limitless. Can we start, Gwyneth? Would you like to share first what led you to explore the connection between the intuition and personal transformation?
I was always very connected to my intuition from the time from when I was really young. And maybe it was kicked off by having a near-death experience when I was 4. But that experience that I had when I was 4, I think it just helped to remind me that we are way more than just the body. We're way more than what just shows on the outside. And we are spiritual beings having this human experience. And so that was a great reminder. It helped me to stay on my path. And I never planned on teaching. Actually, I never planned on teaching these intuitive development classes. But as a child, I was really intuitive. And my mom would even tell me stories about things that I would say to adults where I was just giving them a little reading or giving them a little healing by giving them a reading, giving them a little insight into who they really are instead of who they are just on the outside. So when I was a child, I would do things like that, and my mom would think it was funny and tell me, and be able to also validate that I was sharing something from innocence, but that I was seeing really clearly in someone else. And so then, of course, I got focused on other things, and I wasn't really thinking about being intuitive in a very specific way or wanting to teach or something like that. And then, so then you're a teenager and you're in your 20s and you're just exploring and having different experiences. And I always thought that my focus was going to be on writing fiction, writing novels, and things like that. I was always a very creative person, along with being really intuitive. But then there came a point that I started to really, when I got to my mid 20s, I started to really circle back to wanting to explore in the world of clairvoyance, in the world of healing and meditation and intuition. And so then I started to take classes, and so I still never thought that I was going to teach it. I just was doing it for my own personal growth, my own personal development. I just loved it, being in touch on that level and being able to really explore deeper levels of who I am and who other people are, and what the purpose is for my life and other people's lives here, and how to be more in touch with who we really are. And so then as I was taking some training, people started to ask if I would teach them a class, because they were just seeing that maybe they were just seeing that I was excited and enthusiastic and thriving in my life. And they didn't know maybe why that was. But then I started to say, oh, I'm taking some classes and out in California, and of course, I live on the East Coast, and California is a long way away. And this was before classes were on Zoom kind of thing. It was during a time when you would get on a plane and you would fly. And so these people said, we don't want to fly all the way to California. Because I was like, why don't you fly and take some classes too? And they said, why don't you just teach us? And so then that was 2007 when I said, okay, I'll teach one class. And so I taught one class, and it went on like that, where somebody then the next group said, hey, will you come to us and teach us a class? And I said, okay, I'll teach one more class. And so eventually I founded a center, and really then decided and realized that teaching was something that was really on my path, and that was actually what I was meant to be doing.
I think the universe had other ideas for you.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's very good that you did follow that path. So thank you so much for sharing that. It's amazing how our life unfolds for us, especially when we trust our intuition and that guidance. So thank you for that. And Gwyneth, I'd love to know, a lot of people, even with today's times, a lot of people still wrestle with this question of, is it my intuition? Or am I just overthinking? Why do you think it's such a common struggle that people really are not yet still trusting their intuition, or even recognizing what their intuition is?
I love that question. That's real. And that's really at the heart of my book as well. And so we grow up, most of us, I'm not going to say all of us, because I'm sure there's somebody that grows up in a different environment, but most of us grow up in a culture where the main focus is our intellectual training. And starting in first grade, starting from the moment that we go to school, really the first things that we lose touch with are our intuition and our creativity. And both of those things we're born intuitive and we're born creative. As creative beings, we're incredibly powerful. And when I say creativity, all kinds of creativity, any way, everything you do is a creative act. And your intuition can guide your creativity in the most purposeful way. But starting from day one in our schooling systems, we really, that part of us doesn't have any, is not given any space at the table. We're not given a language for it, and it's not validated within us. So nobody's saying, oh, wow, thank you for your intuitive insight. They're going, let's just learn to read and write, and let's learn all these skills. And of course, our intellectual skills are really important because we can all agree it's great to know how to read, write, and do math. But it becomes an overdeveloped part of us that's not balanced out. And so, really, as spiritual beings having this human experience, we're really meant to be equally intuitive as we are intellectual and be creative and have all those parts working together. But when we start out from first grade onward, having the part of ourselves, our inner guidance gets really invalidated because it's not because necessarily even anyone's doing anything bad. We could have a perfectly nice family and a perfectly okay school situation, even though school's not easy for anyone, but it's just that there's no language given to it. There's no hello that goes out to that child that shares their amazing intuitive observation. As children have these incredible observations that they share, if anyone will listen. And when somebody does listen and really validate that and say, ooh, that is a really interesting insight, that is incredible for their self confidence. And I actually think that so much of our self confidence gets undermined when we lose touch with the intuitive part of ourselves and when we lose touch with the creative aspects of ourselves that are, it's all linked together. And so the all the intellectual training that we get that, like I said, can be very good in a certain sense, that also the critical thinking that we're taught, and this kind of makes me laugh in a way because we're taught critical thinking, which we know is good, but critical thinking can really easily turn into self-critical thinking if we don't have the ability to get in touch with our divine self or with our higher self or with our intuition, because that is the core. That's really the core of our self-confidence and self-esteem, being able to say hello to that beautiful, incredible, powerful, bright part of ourselves. And so the intellectual self, what it'll do, unless we're really consciously aware and practice being consciously aware of our intuition, which of course everyone's intuitive, we can do that. But the intellectual part will often come in and add some kind of complexity or questioning when we receive an intuitive message. Like I can give you a little short story if you want that kind of elucidates this. One time, this is just a very simple, actually, there's two different stories I could give them this. I'll give you the one that's a little bit more intense. There's kind of an everyday version of it, and
Yes.
there's one that's the version that saved my life. One time I was walking on a beach on a South Pacific island, and I was just walking along the edge and I was just looking at shells and I was picking up shells that were washed up. And I saw a different looking shell that was just a little ways into the water. And I stepped into the water and I reached toward that shell because I thought, this is interesting. I haven't seen this before. This is a different kind of shell. I reached toward it to pick it up and I got the message, don't touch, I'm dangerous. So that was my intuition messaging me very clearly, and that was all it said. And so I paused for a second, but this is the interesting part. My intellect said, oh, that's just in your imagination. That shell is probably just vibing you, like the viceroy butterfly makes itself look, you know how certain little animals will make themselves look fierce so that they don't get attacked or eaten. And so my intellectual mind gave me a sort of theoretical hypothesis and invalidated my intuition. And so I reached once again toward the shell. And once again, my intuition said, don't touch, I'm dangerous. And at that point, I said, okay, I'm just going to leave this alone because I have followed my intuition for so long now. I know that there's always a payoff. There's always 5 minutes later, sometimes 5 days later, or even 5 years later, you'll always receive the answer. But in that moment, my intuition was just giving me the clear and simple message. And my intellect was really trying to hijack that by adding complexity and overthinking and giving me some general information that actually was incorrect for the specific context. So I actually had my intuition validated later that day because I got back to the place where we were staying. And then totally unprompted, the daughter of the people of where we were staying, she was probably 10 or something. She just said, hey, see that shell over there? It was a shell just on a table that was empty. She picked it up. She goes, if you ever see this shell in the water, don't touch it. It's really dangerous and it could kill you very quickly. And I said, oh, thank you, because that was actually the shell. And in that moment, and because of course we can't all know everything about marine life, especially I don't even live near the ocean where I live, so we can't know everything. And so my intuition protected me and I listened to it. And then later on, luckily, I got the validation that actually that was a very clear message. And so that's just a really great example of how the intellectual part of us that's so well developed, that's the muscle that we've been most building at the gym or something.
Yeah, thank you. It is such a wonderful and very clear example when we really follow our intuition, but yet our intellect gets in there with all the other reasons and all the other possibilities. Yeah, and we're so glad that you did follow your intuition and that you're still here now. So thank you, Rona. Thank you. So let's talk about your book. Let's talk about Limitless, Transform Your Life with Intuition and Creativity. And
Yes.
we do have it there. Thank you. We will be putting the links for everyone who is watching or listening our podcast. We will be putting them below. So do check out Gwyneth's book on becoming limitless and trusting your intuition, really learning how to trust it. So I'd love to know, Gwyneth, that your book talks about how our intellect and our intuition and creativity can function as a team in our lives. So would you like to share or unpack what that actually looks like in real life?
Yes, in the book, I've got 20 different activities or exercises that you can follow. And so there's 7 chapters. And really, by the end of the book, you'll have an intuitive tools toolbox to put it all together. So it's like a step-by-step book that really builds a strong foundation for you to be intuitive. And there's a lot of there's a lot of different really helpful steps. Like becoming grounded is a great starting point when we want to access our intuition. And so, what's grounding all about? There's a whole chapter on that, for example. And also, there's a lot about how to develop our conscious awareness so that we start to really open up to being intuitive and we start to really use our intuition to guide our creativity because we're incredibly powerful. So that's one of the things that I'd love to have people experience is I think most of us don't realize just how powerful we are. We have what I call creative power, and we can put that creative power into worrying or criticizing ourselves, or we can put it into building an incredible business or being an inspirational speaker or raising our children with lots of love, whatever that might be, we have this creative power. And so, how do we become more conscious of that creative power and then guide it, open ourselves up to letting our intuition really guide that power that we have. And also, how do we start to really recognize, like I was saying before, when it's our intellect and when it's our intuition, and so that we can really put the two together as a team. Like, for example, if you're writing a book, your intuitive knowing comes, you're walking along, you're taking a walk, and your intuitive knowing gives you a great idea for a book. That's just an example, but it could be a business or it could be where you're going to move next or anything like that. But using the book as an example, so we have this incredible idea for a book, and that comes through our intuitive knowing, and then we use our intellect to start to put it into a structure and edit it. And but then at a certain point, of course, with writing a book, we start to run into self-critical thinking. We run into so much fear. I ran into so much fear writing this book. And so how do we recognize when it's fear really giving us those self-critical messages, and how do we release that? And so that's a really important part of it too, is becoming more conscious to knowing really what's real and what's not real, being able to distinguish between what our true feelings are and the feelings that we have absorbed from the world around us. So that's another aspect of working with your intuition and your intellect and your creativity, is recognizing when you've absorbed feelings from the world around you and you start to feel those feelings, and then those and carry those feelings around, which is something that probably everyone who's listening to this podcast does sometimes. And the reason for that is because we care so much about the well-being of others. We're out there in the world as healers, making the world a better place, no matter what we're doing, no matter what our job is. It doesn't matter. If you're a healer, you're going to be sensitive and you're going to be intuitive, and you're out there making the world a better place. You're improving your communities and just improving the world around you, even just by having a conversation with somebody at the grocery store. So each time we do that, sometimes because we're sensitive and we care about others, we absorb some of their feelings and thoughts or their sufferings or struggles. And so it's really beneficial to know how to release that when we carry it around, because when we release that, we just create more space for ourselves to be the healers that we are, the incredible intuitive souls that we are in the world. And so there's a lot of fun exercises and activities in the book that help you to recognize when you have absorbed some energy, and then it's the intuitive part of ourselves, it's our awareness that shines a light on that, guides us toward recognizing it and being able to release it. Whereas the intellectual part of ourselves, that's not, we can't really ask that part of ourselves to do the job of highlighting energy that we're carrying around or noticing what we can release and let go of, because the intellectual part of ourselves tends to function more in past time, if you will. It's holding the experiences that we've had really in the past. And then the associative pictures in our minds, the pictures that we carry around in our minds, it's holding those pictures based on past experiences. But when we come into present time and we can have some way of grounding ourselves and tapping into our awareness, then we start to recognize, oh, it's time to release that old pattern that says, I can't do this, that says, oh, nobody in the family is good at that, so you can't be good at that, or those kinds of things. Or when you get to that halfway point with the book or building the business or whatever it might be, where you're trying to achieve your dream and that's really aligned for you with what you want to create in the world, when those self-critical types of pictures in your minds, because everything starts out as a picture in our mind, when
It
those come
does.
up,
Mm.
yeah,
It
we can,
does. It does. Thank you. And sorry to interrupt you. It does. I was just, everything does start out as a picture in our mind.
yeah,
Unfortunately, not everyone recognizes that or enhances those pictures, follows those pictures. They get the doubt, as you're talking about. They let the
yeah.
doubt overcome them. So, yes. So, thank you. And I'd love to know, Gwyneth, if someone is just feeling really stuck or overwhelmed with life. Life, especially in today's world, brings so much complexity. And I think that we have a pandemic now of overwhelmment. For someone who's feeling really stuck in life, really overwhelmed, and they just see your book, Limitless, for the very first time, where should they focus on? Because it has so much knowledge and so much wealth of goodness in it. Is there any particular part that really helps someone to overcome overwhelming?
Yeah, that's a great question because anxiety is at an all-time high in the world right now.
It
And
is.
we are all being so challenged every day with what's going on in the world. And that's affecting each one of us on so many personal levels and global levels. So it's a great question. And I wrote the book to make it really accessible. I wanted to really make it easy for anybody to pick up and read and to be able to help people with exactly what you're talking about. So really they could open it to any chapter and there would be something that is going to very gently guide them into having and experiencing more joy and more of their own innate awareness and intuition, more of the divine. Because when you start to connect with more of that for yourself, and it's really a remembering, you naturally just do start to connect with a little more laughter, even if it's just the tiniest little bit of laughter on a rough day or a levity. Sometimes it's just you're not even smiling on the outside, but you just connect with a little bit, that tiny little bit just starts to bump up your vibrational frequency because everything's vibrational frequency. And you start to connect with some of those qualities of energy. Like I call one of those qualities inner laughter, because we don't have to be funny. We don't have to be a comedian or even know one single joke to be able to experience the vibrational frequency of inner laughter. And that's a really great way. Like if you even just turn on a podcast, whether you're watching it or listening to it, and it doesn't matter what the podcast is about, but if it brings you a little bit of levity, if it brings you a little joy, a little bit of inner laughter, or maybe a big laugh out loud, that's even better. You're going to move into a different state of being. There's really different states of beingness, and we can move into those really quickly because I certainly have had plenty of extremely grumpy days where I just have to make myself sit down in a chair and just settle into my body, get grounded, and just start to find the humor or the comedy, even in the midst of very challenging
Right.
times.
Yeah.
So I think there's something in the book for everyone to just lift you up.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. And I totally agree. I really personally, it's my personal belief that our purpose in life is to experience joy in everything that we do. And even in today's world that brings us so many challenges, the lesson is to find joy, as you said, even if it's just a little bit. in everything, because we are really meant to be joyful beings, not these serious humans walking around without any purpose, but to really experience joy. So thank you for sharing that. Now, you've mentioned being grounded. Is there any other daily habits besides feeling joyful? Is there any other daily habits or even rituals that you personally use to stay grounded and aligned and can recommend someone else to do?
Yes, I like to start out my day. I have a family, I have a very busy life. I like to just take a few moments, even if it's just 10 minutes, and just make myself sit down in a chair and I visualize becoming grounded. I like to visualize that as that I'm sitting on a tree trunk and that trunk goes down into the earth. And then I like to do a visualization for myself where I bring in different vibrational qualities of energy. I call it the golden sun visualization. And I imagine a huge golden sun over my head. And then I just let it come into my entire space. I choose some qualities that I would like to experience. It's incredible how much that can change your day if you just start out deciding. I call it setting your energy for the day. So you're creating an intention. It begins in your imagination, and you're really saying hello to those qualities within yourself because you have joy within yourself. Even if you feel like you haven't been in touch with it, it's there. You have peace within yourself, even in a world that is not peaceful. You have laughter within yourself that you were in touch with when you were little, even if you feel like you weren't in touch with it more recently, let's say. You have all these qualities. And so I like to just put that into my golden sun, fill myself up entirely with this golden sun from head to toe so that I'm saturated with this visualization. It's a creative visualization, and it really sets my energy so that when I go out into the world, into immediately out into the chaos of the world, whatever that might be, I've decided the qualities that I would like to be vibrating at or be in a vibrational frequency or a state of beingness with, and then other people can match that. And they do it unconsciously. They just might be around me and it's somebody at a bookstore. I was dropping some books off at a bookstore the other day and the security guard came up to me and he just started talking to me and he was just enjoying just the vibrational frequency, and he was just being friendly or whatever. And then I was in getting groceries and the person checking out, this lovely young college student, she just started talking to me. And so it's a really great way to people will pick up because everyone's intuitive. People will pick up on your energy or your vibrational frequency and they'll match that. That's how we are. We tend to match energy, which can go on in the other direction too. Obviously, we can match drama and things like that. But I like to start out being grounded, setting my space with the golden sun. There's a really a bunch of other things I like to do as well. I have a whole toolbox. So that's just a starting point. But also I like to turn down the overanalyzing part of myself as well as to remind myself that when I need to use the analyzing part, it's right there and I can use it, but I don't need it to run my life. So it's nice to quiet that part. And when you intend to quiet down that part of yourself, it's amazing how much peace you immediately feel within yourself. And then as soon as you need to analyze, boom, it's there.
And you can certainly quiet down that part. It takes a little bit.
Yeah.
You certainly can. And thank you for sharing that. I'm not a visual person. I don't actually see things, but I could feel when you're talking about that sun and filling it up and letting it flow all over you. I could feel that energy. So thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. And it does make such a big difference in our life, no matter where we are, to ground
Yeah.
ourselves every day. Even if we're not outside, we can still ground ourselves. And your visualization is a wonderful way of doing that. So thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate
Yeah.
it.
And I love that you said that you don't visualize because that's completely fine. And that's good for people to know. So I'm really glad you said that because a person doesn't have to be able to visualize at all. They can know it just with their knowing, they can feel it. There's so many other ways to access it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Can I just take a moment, Gwyneth, just to really honor you?
Thank you.
Honor you for sharing your gifts, for writing this book and to share your experience of 18 years and more and bringing that to the world and helping others to really to develop their intuition, to trust that guidance. Like I said, I just really like to honor you. So thank you for being who you are. And I'd love to know, talking about intuition, I hear a lot of people saying that we're wanting to develop my intuition. Okay. But what's one mistake that a lot of people make when they are trying to develop their intuition, and how can they avoid it?
I would say forcing it. You can't force your intuition, just like you can't force creativity. It's a receptive state. So I think people go into their intellectual mind, into their thinking brain, going, I'm going to force this, or if I muscle this enough, it's going to happen. If I put enough effort in. And that effort is a quality of the intellectual mind or the thinking brain. And we're taught no pain, no gain. I'm going to say that in quotes, right? No pain, no gain. And so we're given all these messages that we have to fight for things and effort and all this kind of thing. But actually, when it comes to our intuition, it's a beautiful, divine, receptive state. And it's like leaning back, like when you go to the movie theater and you have a comfortable chair and you have your popcorn and you just relax and you lean back and you're just gonna receive. You're just gonna allow it to show up and create the space or hold the space or allow for the space, where however you talk of, there's different ways to talk about it, but it's this beautiful receptive space. So the more we give ourselves permission, we want to give ourselves that inner permission because nobody gave us inner permission to be intuitive. I can almost guarantee for most of us, we didn't get that permission starting from day. Welcome to first grade. Let's all be intuitive, right? If we give ourselves that inner permission to be receptive and let ourselves know that we are, and just move into a space of trusting. And of course, trusting is also just practicing it every day in little simple ways. Oh, what restaurant should I go to? Which would be the most delicious? Yeah, or I need a good parking spot in this really busy parking area. Guide me to a good parking spot, that kind of thing. Or, hey, let's see, where should I go this weekend that would be the most fun place I could visit to really just relax and that kind of thing. So basically, creating the space, giving the permission, really validating it within yourself, and then making it a fun, creative process of baby steps, one step at a time, which is not a baby step at all because one little step is a quantum leap. Just having fun with it rather than we're brought up in a test-based system where there's always a test for everything we have to achieve and we have to be the high achievers and all that. That's not what this is all about at all. This can just be fun and creative and where you're just giving yourself that permission to let it happen.
Absolutely. And that's the best way, is to have fun. And
Yeah.
people try too much, you're forcing stuff, but rather than, again, life is meant to be enjoyed and to have fun, even with developing our intuition. Because I can really see and feel that when we are having fun, everything is light, the energy is light. So it's much more easier to be in touch with our intuition. And I'd
Yes.
love to know, Gwyneth, before we wrap up, I'd love to know if you can share, talking about your book, if you have one surprising insight that emerged for you whilst writing your book.
One surprising insight. Oh my gosh, so many insights. It was writing the book was a huge I grew so much writing the book. And I realized the biggest challenge with writing a book, I would say, and you were asking for one insight, but I guess what came up for me was the biggest challenge with writing the book was taking what's a very experiential process and putting it into a book. And I didn't know if I could do it. And then I realized that I could actually do it because at first I thought, can I really put 18 years of teaching this experiential process into a book and have it actually translate for the reader? And so when I gave it to about 10 beta readers originally, I realized that yes, it is possible to put it into a book. It was just a lot of work and a lot of rewrites to get it to that point. And so I learned as well. Another thing I learned is whatever you really, so often, whatever we love and we're really good at will also bring up our biggest fears.
Yeah.
And so you and so, in some ways, it can even be a sign if you start to notice if you're doing something that you really care so much about and that you love and you know it's bringing something good to the world and your fears start to come up. Sometimes that's actually the take home from that can actually be, hey, you're on the right track. You just have to keep remembering the fears aren't real and just keep releasing those fears. So I would say that I guess that's more than one thing, but that was a big answer.
And it was a wonderful answer because with everything we do, so much fear comes up that holds
Yeah.
us back for some people. But they're
Yeah.
ready to go beyond that fear, to step beyond it where you were. So that was a wonderful thing. So thank you so much. And Gwyneth, it has been an honor. I would really love for you to come back for the Pathways to Wellbeing. Have you got any other books in the process?
I don't at the moment.
Never know what the universe may bring you. But before we go, I'd love to know, is there any other question that I could have asked you? And how would you answer?
Oh my gosh. I think that you covered it really well. I've really enjoyed speaking with you. And yes, I would love to come back on your podcast. I love speaking with you.
Please do. And we
It's
do.
so great to connect with. I love connecting with kindred souls.
Absolutely. And you're very much welcome to come back at any time. And for everyone who is watching or listening to this podcast, again, do yourself a favor and click on those links below and to reach out to Gwyneth because you help so many people with your intuition, and grab yourself a copy of Limitless. It will help you to transform your life with your intuition and your creativity. Because like we've been talking about, Gwyneth, intuition is part of us naturally. We were born with it. We were born creative. We were born intuitive. It's only life that's covered it up.
Yeah.
You're here. You're a shining example of what happens when you allow that, not just skill. It's not a skill. You can learn, you can develop it, but allow that innate ability to emerge.
Yeah, so true.
Um,
And it
Thank
brings
you.
us a lot of joy.
Yeah, thank you ever so much. It has been an honor talking with you today.
It's been an honor to speak with you too, and let's keep in touch for sure.
Thank you ever so much. Thank you for joining us today for our exciting conversation with Gwyneth, who was such an inspiration in how we can transform our lives with intuition and creativity. Please do click on the links below to find out more on everything that Gwyneth has to offer, including her book, Limitless, Transform Your Life with Intuition and Creativity. For more empowering conversations, tools, and strategies, do follow Sacred You on all our social media or visit our website at www.sacredyou, that is the letter U, .love. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button or give us a like so that you never miss another episode. Remember to take some time to ground yourself on a daily basis, and you too can step into your limitless potential. Thank you so much for tuning into our podcast. Stay grounded, stay inspired, stay connected, and until next time, keep walking your pathway to well-being.